And if you want to grow a big business, you have to be able to put the equivalent amount, on the chopping block at risk. So to do $80,000 per month or $82,000 per month, or 83, right? 83.3. To do that much money, you need to be able to spend at least $8,000 per month on marketing. You might not have to spend that full amount, but you need to be willing and able to at least invest that amount.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
What's up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. And today, I'm just having a little chat with Jesse, and we're going to see where it goes. Jesse, partner here at Painter Growth and head coach. We always have great conversations whenever we get together.
Stoked for this one, man. I feel like this one's going to be really free flowing. Have no idea where we're going to go with it, and let's see what happens.
So actually, I know I just talked about like one thing before we went live, but we're going to be meeting for 2 days. Well, we're going to be meeting for like a week, but like basically 2 days where we're just going to be working on our business, planning, figuring out our direction, our strategic initiatives. Why don't we just talk about that and the process that we're going to go through and that we have gone through for goal setting and following traction and things like that. I think that can be pretty relevant for this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I guess the framework. So back in October, after or before our last mastermind in Phoenix, we met together as a team. There was about 8 of us. We sat in Airbnb for 2 days, and we basically crafted out the next 90 days and like did a wireframe for this year, 2025. But we didn't really. That was kind of the first time we got together and really worked on the business. We redid our mission, our vision, our values. But now this time, me and you getting together, I think we have a good foundation from that last session, and we're going to be able to get a lot deeper and really craft out like where we want the business to be in like 3 to 5 years, and more specifically where we want to be in 1 year from now, and not just where we want to be, but how we're going to get there too. Right? Like that's like having the vision is one thing, but the strategy that we're going to take to actually implement is a completely separate thing. I'm really excited to get into.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about doing it, to just really being living in like a proactive space and understanding that not only just what we're going to be doing in quarter 1 or quarter 2, but really knowing like what is coming in quarter 3 and quarter 4 and how that all contributes to the annual goal, and just keep getting further and further ahead on our business and how we're helping people here. I think it's really fun to live in that zone.
Why don't we talk about goal setting for a minute? Why do you think goal setting is so important when it comes to business and personal as well?
Yeah, so I think I've started to switch out the word goal setting a little bit more, like with intention setting. And when you have intention, it gives you the direction and a starting point of where you want to go. And so I was reading this book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. It's amazing, where he just talks about his life journey and how he just surrendered to the flow of life. But one thing that, as people hear like surrender, one fallacy that I had when I first read it was that like surrendering, and where some people might have resistance to this idea, is being passive, right? Like being passive in life and whatnot. But that's not what surrendering is at all to it. And if you, as I was reading the book, everything that he did, he had an intention for, and then he would see what happened, or like what the universe would provide him. So for example, he set the intention to build this meditation hut on this beautiful piece of land that he bought in like the 70s. And then what happened was these 2 guys came into his life. One was an architect, one was a builder, and they built this amazing, beautiful meditation hut and whatnot. And so he had the intention of building this, kind of low-key meditation hut. And what happened is he surrendered and just allowed the universe to provide. It was like the most beautiful meditation hut out there. So, going back, whether we use the word intention or goal setting, it gives you drive and it gives you aim. And then if you take it a step above that, which is your mission, and thinking about your mission for life. Have you ever read the book, The Way of the Superior Man?
I have not read that book.
Amazing book. Amazing book. It talks a lot about masculine and feminine energy. not so much like male or female. So you can dissociate, you can dissociate that. But they said when you're in your masculine energy, which I'm actually in my feminine energy a lot, like with the intuitive type of work or meditation in that type of realm. So just again, male, female, masculine, feminine, different, right? But the masculine energy, what drives you the most is actually your mission. But then on the feminine energy, what drives you most is your family, right? And so they talk about connecting that masculine energy. When you have your focus is your mission, then everything else in your life actually improves around it because you're so focused on that mission and serving there. But in the feminine energy, it's more about the focus on the family unit, and that is the mission. So it's a really interesting concept around like when you're living in your masculine or you're living in your feminine, where the focus and attention is.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can see how it very much dovetails together. Like personally, in business, I'm very mission driven. You know, I love helping people. I love seeing something grow. I love having like an awesome, powerful, collaborative team and accomplishing big things. But I do this all in the mission of providing for my family and setting them up. Right? It can feel sometimes selfish, focusing too much on business, knowing, I mean, because like it is fun and I do get a lot of like energy and dopamine out of solving business problems. And that takes me, like when I'm working on business, it takes me away from family. Even though one is being done for the other, but there's still a selfish component from it. How does that all fit in your perspective?
Yeah, I think it goes back into like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and just in terms of like where you rank, you know, your mission and what level you're living at, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts off with your like physiological needs, right? That's food, water, and then it goes into your safety, and it's generally like shelter, right? And then you have a sense of belonging, that's community, that's, you know, family in that area. Then you have self-esteem, right? And then you have self-actualization. And so when you can, the higher, you have to have a certain level, right, of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like if you're hungry, it's gonna be hard for you to have any other mission than to get food, right? Or if you need sleep, you don't have other mission than to get sleep. Or if you need shelter, like that is your mission and whatnot. But as you move up the ranks in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then you can connect your mission to higher and higher levels of service. And ultimately, what happens is that when you get to especially when you start living in the self-esteem and then the self-actualization, and you connect your mission to the service in there, then those things like providing for your family, being a really good community member, and all those things under that, those kind of just happen automatically. It's like, have you ever heard the concept of focus on big problems and your little problems start to go away? It's kind of the same idea here. The bigger your mission gets, but you can't just, like I said, if you're hungry or if you need sleep or you need shelter, you can't just jump to self-actualization and say, well, those are going to go away, right? There has to be a level of baseline that you have, and then as you do that,
you're like fully self-actualized, like a yogi, and you have no need for food or water anymore.
I mean, there are a couple examples out there. I don't know if we want to go there today, but
so
how do you connect and think about that? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
What like the Maslow hierarchy, the self-actualization?
Yeah, and connecting your mission to, you know, where you're at there, and then how that translates to what problems that you're solving in your life, which is also the other thing of you're always going to have problems in your life, and the quality, I think it's something Mark Manson said. He's like, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of problems that you solve. So just solve better problems and you have a better quality of life.
I also heard, I can't remember who said it, but the size of a man is dictated by the size of his problems, or something like that. Does that make sense? Where it's like if you're worried about little small things and you're being petty and like that doesn't make you a very big man. But if you're like, if you're worried about like how to solve, you know, the water crisis in your state, like, okay, that's a pretty big problem, and like you're obviously solving something, so that makes you a big man. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, connecting this right back to like running a painting company. I remember in 2015, right? Like right off the hop, I never intended to paint or anything. It was like within 2 months of launching production, like my goal was to be at 3 crews. And it was like that focus and problem of getting to 3 crews within 2 months. I didn't actually deal with a lot of the small problems, like picking up paint from the paint store or making sure that pressure washing was getting done. All those things just started to happen because, those systems and delegation, they just had to be in place so that I could focus on those higher level problems where I didn't get caught in the trap of being, so I guess like stuck on those small problems. Does that make sense? Yeah. In terms of that context?
So slightly sidestep here. I have a client, he did $130,000 last year in total revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to do $1 million this year. Mm-hmm. Right? That's a huge change. And obviously when we talk about goal setting, we want to set big goals, but we also want to set like challenging but achievable goals that we're capable of doing within the time frame that we set within it. What would you say to the person who set that type of goal from going from 140,000 to $1 million in 1 year?
I think the first question that I would ask is why. Like, why is that important to you? And then I would say,
what?
Okay.
I would say whoever sets a goal at 1 million is an ego-driven goal, right?
Not right. Well, the next question that I would ask that individual is, well, why not 1.2? Right. And then I would say, okay, well, why not 1.4? And then I would go down and say, why not 700? And like most of the time that is what I hear when people set that is it's just a completely like meaningless goal, and they don't even know what that number means for like their net profit or how much money they're actually going to make, right? And so when I love asking that question of, okay, when someone sets a really big goal, I'll actually say, well, why not? And then I'll go like 20 or 30% higher, and they're like, well, I don't know. And then it actually opens up that conversation to get to the root of why that's really important to them. I think that, especially in painting world and game, I think doing 130,000 in 1 year and going up to $1 million, it's definitely possible, right? Especially with the right tools, systems, coaching, intentions in place. You can absolutely do it, but you got to get to the root of why that's important to that person, and then understand that and communicate to them like actually what it's going to take of them to do that, right? Do they actually know what's required of them, or are they just setting this thing that's there? Here's what I can't stand is when someone sets a goal and I say, great, how much money do you want to make? And somebody says, what do they say? They say, well, as much money as I can, as much money as I want. I'm like, I would rather you tell me you want to do 10 million this year or 20 million, because we can actually problem solve that number if you want, but problem solving infinity is freaking hard.
Yeah.
Right. So I think everything is problem solvable if you do it and whatnot. But if you're sitting there and you're like, or the opposite is, okay, well, how much are you going to spend on marketing this year? Well, as little as possible. That's a really hard problem solve, right? Versus if you say you only want to spend $7,000 on marketing, okay, I'm going to optimize every dollar of the $7,000. We can problem solve that, right? But when you live in this world where it's really vague, then it's tough. I think there is a next evolution of this too, though, where if you get too attached to the goal, it can actually limit you as well. That's a piece that a lot of people don't talk about, and I think that's a piece that that I think I'm going to be introducing and talking about. As people reach a certain level, I think that level in the painting world is kind of like above that $1 million, right? Because once you get to $1 million, things change, right? You have way more retained earnings, you have resources, you have capital, you have team members. You can grow your business totally different. That if you can be a little bit more fluid with the goal and have a little bit of detachment from the actual number, and then you're showing up every single day, every single week in your service and in your offering with your team, I think people are capable of considerably more than they are, but they actually will false put a ceiling on themselves. So I think there's two sides of this, and it very much depends on where you're at, which is connected right back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs of which game are you playing, where are you at, and then what is your mission there. So I think it all evolves as you evolve.
I mean, yeah, that's absolutely true. I also think that, when you go back to saying like how much do you want to make, and then how much are you willing to spend to make that, first question being as much as possible, the second question being as little as possible, you have to be willing to put out that money to swing big. And if you want to grow a big business, you have to be able to put the equivalent amount, on the chopping block at risk. So to do $80,000 per month or $82,000 per month, or 83, right? 83.3. To do that much money, you need to be able to spend at least $8,000 per month on marketing. You might not have to spend that full amount, but you need to be willing and able to at least invest that amount.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go like, if you problem solve instead of how can I spend as little as possible and change that to how can I deploy $8,000 this month? Right. We talked about that in December during the school games because we're like, how can we spend $40,000 more on customer acquisition in December? I think that's a question that we asked ourselves because we already had this budget like 70K, and we're like, we did the math. We're like, hey, we can spend 40K more. How can we deploy this in the most efficient way? It's like, let's spend it, please. And we knew that if we would spend that in a smart way and we put our heads together, like it's going to come back. But like that's the type of swing that you have to be willing to make to get an outsized reward. That's why business ownership is inherently risky, and you have an ability for an outsized return, but you have to be willing to put your money on the line.
I'm curious though, like why did going back to like the school games and saying, yeah, we got to spend this other 40, because the way you're talking about it, it sounds like the least risky thing you could have done. So how did you get to that point though?
Of the 40,000?
Like knowing that we had to spend another 40, because like, what did you know in the back of your mind, or what did you know about your business or the data and the numbers to make that 40K, the way you're talking about it, doesn't sound risky at all. It actually sounds like risky if you don't spend that money.
For sure. I mean, it comes down to data, right? We know our data really well. It took us a long time to get to that point where we know our data, but we're at about a 20% cost of acquisition.
Right.
So if we spend $40,000, we should generate about $200,000 of revenue. We don't get that all up front, but like within a year, that 40K will turn into about 200K. And in the context of the school of games in December, even if our return was going to be less than our typical 5-to-1, it was a risk that we were willing to do because of the prize money on the other line if we were able to win that revenue. So the economics changed a little bit with that, and that increased the risk threshold that I was able to look at because of that shift in economics. Now, would I still spend that 40,000 this month, knowing that there is no additional, pot at the end, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Absolutely, because I know my economics and I know what it takes to generate revenue in our business model.
Yeah, and from my side of things on the coaching and making sure that we're fulfilling, people are getting results. I said if you spend that 40K, might just have to kill you.
Yeah, I mean, we brought on lots of 5 times more new clients in December than we typically bring on in a given month, and because of that, we were able to hire 3 more badass coaches to join our team, and one of which you guys met on that last Brush Busters with Kit, and we're going to be bringing on Andy and Ben as well over time into the Brush Busters series for everyone to meet. And yeah, super stoked about our coaching roster now. We're getting a rock star team together.
Yeah, that's so good. What I'm curious for you, what was your big, going back to mission and then purpose and understanding? We're having a conversation, was back in like November, December, when I was talking about the intuitive coaching I do, and it's very much my life's work, right? Like I feel like that's my calling. That's why I was here. The intuitive coaching, in conjunction with business coaching here, and you were talking about painter growth, and you're like, yeah, this is my calling. This is my life's work and whatnot. What moment did you know that what you're doing here in painter growth, like when did it click for you, like that thought?
That's a good question. And actually, I can't remember the exact client that it was, but it was early on after we launched Blueprint it would have been January 2022 or so, when I put like a small amount of effort, relatively small amount of effort into a client, and that changed their life. Like it completely, like they went from being a solo painter to having a couple crews, being off the tools, making more money than they ever made before, with a relatively small output from me, right? So at that point, like I felt tremendous amount of leverage and power that what we have is a vessel that can truly help people. And if I was able to scale it up, like it kind of felt like wielding like a really powerful, like Thor's hammer or something. It's like, how do we get this out to as many people as possible? Because it can change an industry. And that was the moment. Like I said, I can't remember the client, but I'm like, we got to scale this thing because of how much good it can do. And 3 years later, We've worked with almost 1,000 clients. We have an amazing team of coaches, and we're doing good every single day.
Yeah, I think that at the root of that, and underneath everything, it's that level of service and in helping other people, right? I wonder how many people. This is something that I thought a lot about in my painting company, but I don't know if I ever fully connected the dots to like get the most out of myself in this realm. But when you paint your house, right, or you get like a renovation done, either the outside of the house or the inside of the house, it actually changes how it changes how you feel about it. And I wonder how many people listening to this right now haven't like fully connected those dots when they deploy that service in their painting company and they fully transform somebody's home, whether interior or exterior, how much that actually helps the person potentially with their mental health, how they feel in their home, all those things that are of service. And I wonder if there's a way that because what you're doing, you're owning a painting company and transforming homes, making the community beautiful and whatnot. How could the owners and the painters listening to this get more connected to their clients in that way, where they actually see the results like that we see every day when we see our clients getting these crazy wins all the time? But I don't know if there's that feedback loop as much in the painting industry that I think would actually be a incredibly driving force for so many people out there listening right now.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely connect the increase in home value, right? You make things last longer and you increase the value of the neighborhoods and all of that. But you're right, there's definitely the emotional component of it and the mental health that we don't consider as often. I know you need to jump. I will finish up an outro for this episode. So you go do the growth pod call. And thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Sounds good. One final thought on that. Post follow-up survey and get your clients to rate how more subjective things on how they feel on a scale of 10 before they had their house painted and then after, and do that. I think that'd be really interesting. Anyways, thanks for having me on.
Later.
Bye.
So just connecting back to making people feel good, just as a kind of a few final thoughts. Painting is the last trade to go in, right? Painting is something that it's not super invasive in the way that like carpentry or flooring or drywall work is, because you're not building, but you're finishing, you're beautifying, you're protecting. And it's the part that like people are interacting with and touching and seeing and viewing. So I think there is an emotional component to it. And I think it's up to you to connect your clients, help them really actualize that and realize what type of emotional connection they're having, what type of response they had. So if you can implement some sort of survey, keep it in mind that like if you email a survey or text it to the client, they're going to be very low likelihood of them responding. So the best way is like handing them a physical card and having them fill something out in front of you. That will get 100% response rate because you're giving it to them and say, hey, here, well, I finished up a bit of paperwork. Can you just fill this out for me? And then you collect it right there. So doing something like that can be really valuable. And then showcasing those comments either on your Instagram, on your Facebook, or in a binder when you're doing your next estimate to show people the comments and the emotional subjective responses and feelings that people have to your work. So definitely kind of a meandering episode. Hopefully that was okay for you guys. I'm Michael Rickman. Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.